I'm Sarah Bunn. I'm a conservator here at the gallery. My specialism is in paper conservation. I work with works of art on paper, so watercolours, photographs, sometimes collage, mixed media. When I was at high school, we moved to England and my mother started training in conservation. Studied graphic design for 4 years. I ended up in the cultural heritage sector for 4 years, which I really enjoyed, but I got to the point I needed to either do a degree in that or... And then my mother asked me to be an apprentice to her, and I knew at the end of those 2 years that this is definitely the marriage that I wanted with art and history and materials. Working in conservation, we work both with the exhibition program, the loan program, and with new acquisitions. Every work that goes on the gallery walls is checked by conservation before it's put on display, and usually when it comes off as well. Every work going on loan has a detailed condition report. Every proposed acquisition is assessed by us, and we write a condition report on it. If we decide a treatment is required before a work can be displayed or sent to storage if it's a new acquisition, we work really closely with curators. Just because we can do something doesn't mean we necessarily should. There are a lot of ethical considerations in conservation. So there's a spot in the corner of a print, we could reduce it, but what does that mean? Would we have to wash the print? Would that change the effect? And are we losing meaning? So working with curators is fabulous because they have a much broader understanding of that artist and how they work. Probably the most important attribute is attention to detail, patience, a considered approach to your work. Collaboration, communication is really important because we work so closely with so many departments, curatorial initially, but also registration and installation, design. We work closely with all of those areas. Sometimes it's more, there may be a really fragile work and in one corner, and it might be light sensitive, and there might be another work that's a digital work that has fluorescent components that are going to shine on that. So we have to kind of, although the curator will say, ideally I want these works in this room, how they are ordered is worked out closely with conservation and designs. I love working with art. Being a conservator is a really privileged position. Spending time with artworks out of their frame, under their mount, you get your torch out and you get into the zone and it's you and the artwork, and it's like your eyes just open. Artwork starts to speak to you. You start to notice the direction of a brushstroke, not just that it's a brushstroke. It's very collaborative, but there's a lot of very solitary moments where it's just you and the artwork and the things that no one else gets to see, and that's really rewarding. So what we have here are 2 works on paper, Japanese block prints from the late 1800s. They often have remnants of previous displays, so these old hinges I need to remove. They've particularly caused a little bit of distortion in this corner. There's some losses along the edges that the curator has asked me to infill and tone. So, and how I go about that is we make our own paste in paper conservation. It's a wheat starch paste and it's cooked up fresh every week. It's sieved to break down the starch molecules so you get a beautiful creamy consistency. And we use wheat starch paste because we know a lot about the way it behaves over time, the way it works with materials. It's been around for centuries and it's a very stable material. Then to the toning, we have a range of paper fibres, Wattman paper fibres. They're very pure cellulose fibres, and they've been toasted to for different periods of time, so that you can see they change their colour. So you choose the colour that fits the back of the paper the best. I used watercolours to tone the paper fibres, with a little bit of wheat starch paste to put inside the holes. We also use different Japanese papers for the repairs, and the reason we like using Japanese papers, even sometimes for Western artworks, is that they come in a wide variety of weights and strengths. I used the watercolour and I brushed out several mixtures of colour, because it's not until it dries do you actually see what the finished result's going to be like. And then that was traced out with a needle over the light box and then adhered with the wheat starch paste. And then all I have to do is trim it back. So it is still quite visible on the back, and of course it's documented that this has been done. So for future reference, it will be known as an addition.
My name is Tom Langlands and I have 2 roles at the gallery. My first role is as a mount cutter, that's cutting window mounts for works and preparing them for display. And the second role I have at the gallery is as a reproduction frame maker, so reproducing historical frames for works in the collection that have lost their frames. I studied a Bachelor of Visual Arts as an artist, and I am a practicing artist, but along the way I've wanted to find employment in the arts sector, so I've worked in various jobs from art supply shops to frame makers, and eventually I managed to get my foot in the door here at the gallery. As an artist, I really find the job rewarding because I'm working with art every day, and also there's always little discoveries to be made, whether I find works that I'd never seen before, or whether in handling the artworks we discover something on the artwork that may not have been seen for a long time. With frame making, it's never sort of a repetitive job. Each frame is different. Each frame's a challenge, and each frame's very rewarding when I actually have the frame completed and it's up on the wall and it looks fabulous. Yeah, when considering frames for works, I consult with curators, and a fair bit of research is done into stylistic traits from the era that the painting may be from other works that by the same artist. And we look at the archives to see if we have footage or images of that work in the collection or in previous collections. So in my role, an attention to detail is important, dexterity in terms of making things and being very handy, working kind of on the go with any issues that may arise. Yeah, so this is a frame I'm currently working on. It's one of two frames that I have to make, a reproduction frame for Joseph Backler, who is an early Australian colonial artist. And so I've already made the carcass. We start off with raw timber, and using the router and other machinery, we get it to this point in time where it's ready to have some ornaments put on it. And I've got some images over there of frames of Joseph Backler's original frames that the State Library has in their collection. So we were able, through communicating with them, able to go over there and take a pressing of some of their ornaments. So from this pressing, I make my own positive ornament like this, and I fine tune it, and then eventually I make a negative cast, which then I'll use to press what we call compo into it, and then apply it to the frame before we prep it for gilding. So here I'm preparing a Japanese print for an exhibition that's coming up in October. It's made of 3 parts. It's triptych essentially, and I'm going to cut a window for it and prepare it to go into a standard frame, which is the sort of frames we have at the gallery have set sizes, which makes it easier just to frame the collection pieces. With regards to mounting specs, like the display specs that we go on, we kind of consult with curators. So basically I'm cutting the board to size and using this very old guillotine, but it's very precise. So we have a computerized mount cutter here, whereas in the old days we would have cut it by hand. This reduces cutting a window down to just a number of minutes, whereas in the past it would have taken a good mount cutter maybe 15 or 20 minutes to cut a window. So the mount cutter can cut very accurate measurements right down to the sort of almost 1/2 millimetre. So now I've laid the window over and I'm just lining it up so I don't crop too much of the edge off of the image. And once we've lined it up, then I'll continue to paste these works into place with hinges and then create a folder with the window and then pass it on to framing to get put into a frame.
Hi, my name is Brett Cuthbertson and I'm a Senior Installation Officer here at the gallery. I install with a team of people. I install exhibitions and all the artworks here. I've worked at the gallery now for 38 years, started in 1981. Didn't think I'd last 2 weeks, but I'm still here now. I love it, obviously. For this role, I think skills and attributes you need are patience, number one, strength and tenderness, and a gentle touch. You really have to know, treat everything with kid gloves. Working with artists is such a rewarding, some of them are crazy, but they're great. I love them, I love artists. And just seeing an exhibition when it's finished, when you've finished it, and you can stand back and look at it, it's very rewarding. The major part of my role is installing artworks, obviously. When that's not happening, it's storage, as in plinths, things for sculptures, maintenance of our tools. We also hang shows off-site at the Brett Whiteley studio, government offices, and at Archibald time I'm also head packer and choose the packing room prize. So that's only at Archibald time, the rest of the time I'm an installer. Designers have to think, and curators, when they're choosing works for exhibitions, is if the space can take them, the size, what the wall's made out of, that's where we come in, whether it'll actually take the weight, whether the floor will take the weight of sculptures. They have to take all that into consideration. Sometimes they don't, and we've got to work it out, but that's part of the job. So the 1500 is our middle centre line here at the gallery for most works, so I've used that using the laser level. So what I'll do now is I'll hang that on these wires. The reason for that is that the curator can move them, we can move them along the track if he or she wants to get them in the right position. And the hooks that they hang on have a little ridge at the back, so once you have it levelled and in the right position, you just gently rub and it marks the exact spot to put the hook. The hooks go on, they're not always in the same spot. So all you do is measure the halfway of the painting or picture and then measure up to the hook and add that to the 1500, and that gets you the exact spot where to put the hooks. It just needs a little bit of adjustment. And that is perfect. I'll now rub it gently against the wall. Now some works you can't do this with because the frames are too fragile or whatever, but these ones you can. And as you can see, it leaves a mark, and the other side perfect. That's where you put your hook. One of our guys worked this out. If you put the bottom hole over the mark and then just mark the top of that, that's the exact spot you put the bottom screw. So it goes in there. And then you always put one in the middle of the slot. That way if you have to adjust the height, you just pull the bottom screw out and slide it up and down. So same again, other side. Check the level. Perfect.